Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm talking about. Keep your clothes on now, Luke.
Wrong show.
Yeah.
After hours on Friday.
Yeah. 5 p.m.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another Harmony Outdoors podcast. Today we got a pretty special guest with us here today, Mr. Jason Lapardis from TFT. Mr. Jason, how you doing today, sir?
Man, I am fantastic. Appreciate you guys having me on, and looking forward to another good discussion.
Good deal. We got Brandon back with us today. How you doing, Mr. Masters?
I am doing well today. Doing well. Looking forward to this conversation. I know Mr. Jason's got a ton of good information, and really looking forward to some of the ideas he's got today.
He is definitely an information hub.
Uh-oh. Well, I hope it's good information, but I'm going to give you something today, boys. No doubt about it.
That's for sure. That is for sure. So the thought process behind this was to have Mr. Jason on. Me and Brandon, we've been managing a private lease for about 3 years now. And so, deer season's here. Everybody's thinking about deer, but we also want to make sure we don't forget about our turkeys. So we've been, like I say, managing this property for about 3 years now. And so just some genuine questions, some genuine mindset stuff that we wanted to drag out of Mr. Lapardis about, how can we help our turkeys while preparing for deer season and throughout the fall to ensure that we, again, have turkeys for tomorrow. So let's just jump in. Mr. Jason, let you introduce yourself, who you are, how you got in this world, how you ended up with TFT.
Uh-oh. How I get in this world? Well, there was a mama one of those days.
We'll just let you tell a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump into the nerd stuff.
Well, sure. So, yes, I do work for Turkeys for Tomorrow. I'm technically based out of near Bowling Green, Kentucky. TFT is truly kind of based out of the southeast, but we call home Alabama. And technically my home is truly, hey, man, throw that out the window. I'm going, War Eagle, baby. Even though I bleed orange now, like UT orange. But no, I'm a native Alabama, from Northwest Alabama. I grew up in primarily Lauderdale County, but I cut my teeth in Lauderdale County, Limestone County, and got to be honest with you, boys. Those two counties is where there's always been a black hole for turkeys. And, I think back to what may have driven some of my early passion for the bird, but growing up and not having turkeys, not knowing what they are. And honestly, the first turkey I ever saw was on Freedom Hills, WMA, down in Cherokee. Still remember it. Didn't know what the heck it was. And I thought it was a vulture, to be honest with you, because I've never seen a turkey before. And literally, man, I had a gentleman invite me on a first turkey hunt. Now, he knew about as much as I did about turkey hunting, little to none. And no kidding, I do remember, he's like, man, I got this great video you need to watch. And it was one of those, old, VHS. He gave me the tape and I brought it home and threw that thing in. I'm like, who is this fella right here? Who is this? Who's Preston Pittman? Who's this? And I didn't know anything about it, right? But listened, bought a turkey call. Actually, the first call I had was it was one of Harold Knight's calls, one of those push pin calls, and I didn't know jack about turkey hunting at all. Didn't really have anyone to show me. But me and this other fella, we went out first turkey hunt and got out on Freedom Hills. We're excited about the day and literally got lost. Okay. This is before our great cell phones with Onyx on it and all this, where, man, you don't get lost anymore. Well, we're out there and I'm like, man, it's turning daylight and I'm listening, didn't know what I'm listening for. And I'm like, man, I think I see a box stand in front of me. And literally we had, went through a holler the wrong direction, end up on a neighboring property. Well, about an hour after daylight, and I'm trying to use this box call, and I had a mouth call, and I sucked at it. I'll tell you. And literally, man, I had a couple of gentlemen older gentleman up the hill from me see me and hear me and go, man, that must be a dying turkey down there. And they come down there and they said, boy, you're not on our, you're not on public ground, because they knew. They're like, we always get idiots that basically accidentally come down this holler. And I said, sir, I'm sorry. And I apologized. And I said, look, I'm with another guy and I don't know where the heck I am, but I'll go back wherever I need to. And they were very understanding. We sat there and talked, and they pointed me in the correct direction, and we went back. So we didn't see a turkey that day, nor did we shoot one. But yeah, that was my first experience. But yeah, man, I've been in the turkey arena for some time. I have a background as a wildlife biologist / forester. Went to school at UT Knoxville, East Tennessee. Did a lot of work there. Actually, my master's degree work was not with turkeys, but with another type of critter that drives my fuel and passion as well, but elk. And so I worked on an elk reintroduction back into the eastern United States in the Cumberland Mountains. On the side, I was doing bear work. I've been known to live in Cades Cove and tackled a little over 100 bears in the backcountry. A lot of fun. Spent a lot of time in the cove doing deer census work, etc. when the gates closed and no one was around. And so love the mountains, love Appalachia, but love turkeys. And so my pathway from there got lost down in Georgia for a bit, working as a private lands biologist, kind of even coordinating work across the southern half of the state, even doing work on some of the wildlife management areas, and even putting a lot of properties in conservation easements. So got a great blended background, and then went to work for the National Wild Turkey Federation for about a decade, and moved to where I am now. And then somehow I went and did some work with the Union Sportsman Alliance for a bit, and then found myself here. And so also do some private consulting when I have time, which is don't have much time now because TFT is growing, and we put a lot of time and effort into it. So quick and dirty, get you there.
You've been you've been around the block several times then, all across the country.
Man, Lord have mercy, I have. I tell everyone I'm like an old mutt that's been around the Southeast a bunch because I pissed on a bunch of trees, right? And so I've marked my territory pretty well, but I've also done a lot of work in the Midwest. And so I'll be up in Michigan here in a couple of weeks for the Midwest Wild Turkey Working Group meeting, and looking forward to kind of reconnecting with old colleagues there to drive what we're doing for Turkeys for Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's good stuff. Good stuff.
Well, before we jump into the nerd stuff, I wanted to say, we here at Harmony have been supporters of Turkeys for Tomorrow for, I guess, ever since we started. I think we were about 6 months into Harmony, which was about a little over 3 years ago. And about 6 months in, we contacted and got a hold of a fella that used to work at TFT. Won't name any names, but and then we got in touch with Mr. Ron Jolly, got involved with TFT, and have seen this thing go in a direction that I guess from the get-go we had wanted to see it go. These guys are helping turkeys, so we're supporting them. So conservation is a huge part of who we are at Harmony. It's a huge part because of, we're a huge advocate of children in the outdoors. So we love conservation. We want to pass it on. So let's get into a little bit of land management talk here, Mr. Lapardis. And I'm just going to shoot you some questions. Brandon will have some questions, I'm sure, along the way. And we'll just try to be informational for these people watching, hopefully.
That's good. We really appreciate you and Brandon greatly. Y'all have done a lot for Turkeys for Tomorrow, just gifting your time, your talent, and your treasures. And so you couldn't ask for anything more from individuals that share the passion and the vision for doing conservation work targeted on the wild turkey. So thank you so much for working with us hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Been our pleasure.
Brandon, you want to start off the questioning, or you want me to start off, brother?
So the direction that I want to go is, I know you get drilled, Jason, all the time on, just the same old questions. And what we're trying to do is introduce now, especially in our region, is it's time for people to start preparing for deer season. They're putting in their food plots, lots of water sources, lots of salt licks, and good old fashioned corn piles and stuff, But what are some ways? And I know there's a lot of textbook answers, that kind of go along with the subject, but what are ways that we can incorporate conservation for turkey while we're getting prepared for deer season and preparing our lands?
I got to be honest with you guys. This is the most important time of the year for turkey management because of the disturbance timing. Now, I'm going to preach for a minute, so y'all just bear with me. But disturbance timing is critical for really trying to create the correct weed community. And I ain't going to go super technical here, but weed communities are critical, not only for a forage standpoint for deer, but also a forage standpoint for creating the correct types of seeds that's very beneficial for the wild turkey. And then also the structural component, which I talk about structure as in the vertical component when these birds are on the ground to provide the correct type of cover that they need, anything from a poult to an adult bird. And you're thinking like, well, we don't have poults right now. Well, I hope we don't have poults right now. I hope we have juvenile birds. But
That's right.
We always have to be thinking about the future. And so disturbance timing right now is critical. And so whether we use prescribed fire right now, which I was actually at a prescribed fire meeting yesterday in Alabama talking about this, but prescribed fire right now is super beneficial, especially in your part of the country, because your hardwoods are really about to shut down. Okay. And so it's a critical time if let's say you have a pine forest, pine savanna, a woodland type perspective where you're trying to set back some of these woody species. If you do it whether with an herbicide, with mechanical work, and or with prescribed fire, you have the highest efficacy of kill mortality right now when you do that. And so this is a primo time. September is like my love month for birds and turkeys because if you do some kind of disturbance, it's good. Not only can you set back those woody species, but you promote. I had this great picture. I wish I could show y'all right now of a bird dog that was covered in all these crazy, like heavy seeded desmodium, beggar weed, you name it, that really shows that if you do the habitat correctly right now, you disturb it right now, you get all these good weeds. And so I even had a picture of a field that we disturbed in a month ago, August. And then one we disturbed in September. And I could get real intricate and go, hey, we can even disturb by the different weeks and promote different weed communities. And so for now, if we start doing some disturbance, let's say in an open field, we can get a ton of ragweed response. And as this ragweed starts coming up and emerging, you'll see it come up. It'll get, a few inches high almost immediately. That is by far the best deer nutrition you can get out there with crude protein.
Right.
And those deer are still craving it, by the way. And so you create some natural food plots for deer. But what's beautiful about this is you create what I call great brood range, thinking about springtime for turkeys. And then 2 years from now, that really evolves into fantastic nesting habitat. A lot of good weeds coming in, partridge pea, milk pea, et cetera, that's good. And also, depending on how you disturb, you also get these great panicums, which is these nice little heavy seeded weeds that come up, grasses, that really mimic almost like a brown top millet that's going to be available in the spring. And I'm going to tell you right now, boys, if you want to put a great food source on the ground where you will have birds strutting in that area in the springtime, you need to disturb the dirt right now. Bottom line. And I'm not talking about putting in a food plot, just enough to scratch the surface a little bit, and it's going to be there. I mean, it's that simple. Anyway, and now you got me preaching. I told you I was going to do it.
Well, that's good. That's what we want. I think there's a big miscommunication and it has evolved that way over the last several years since QDMA has kind of been a thing that, you just got to have this big, huge, nice, pretty carpet looking green field with corn feeders all the way around, and
Right.
it's, there are so many things that are naturally in the seed bed. There are so many things that are, good for both turkey and deer, but we gotta, in my opinion, we just got to get the knowledge out there of the things like what you're talking about. And we've been fortunate enough, with traveling, doing some of the stuff that we've done, to be able to see a lot of this. And
Yeah.
again, it's there, it's in the seed bed. All you got to do is just put the right tools to work. And not only are you going to benefit your deer naturally, with the things that are in the seed bed, but again, like you're saying, looking down the road, 3 months, 6 months, a year, even up to 3 years, it's just as good equally for deer as it is turkey. So
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm not trying to take away from having so we can differentiate a lot of things here and we get way into the weeds, but no doubt having some places that you want to see, whether it's a deer or turkey, we can help do that by disturbing. But we can also have some supplemental items out there. And I say, traditional food plots, if constructed correctly, can provide more year-round benefits. And it's what I call it's the backup plan, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if Mother Nature's doing everything she's supposed to do and everything's great, fantastic. But on those hard years where something doesn't work out, maybe you were not able to get out and get that burn in. Maybe you're not able to get the disturbance that you need into your forested habitat. Or maybe you're on a lease where you can't do some of this stuff and you have to focus in on that little open land. Maybe having that mixed clover plot, and something that, even one of the folks we're working with Whitetail Institute, where we have this, full strut mix where it's basically a blended mix where you get, basically different times of the summer going into the fall, a peak nutritional value with clovers. Different types of clovers peak at different times of year, right? So you talk about a crimson clover or a ladino or one of the other, there's a ton of clovers here and they all have peak nutritional value times where you can maximize that. And those flowers on them are really something that turkeys tend to hit. They also have very high nutritional value from a palatability standpoint, which also means they're digestible. So for deer, that's very important. For turkeys, what that means is digestible items means it attracts a lot of bugs. A lot of bugs equal a lot of nutrition for birds. So when you put all this together, yes, traditional food plots can be good, but I think they're a great backup program for almost anyone. And if you merge that along with traditional management and other perspectives, now you maximize across the board what you can do. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not one of these guys that likes to put out corn every day because I'm not going to do it. Don't believe in it. All this is just a big old heavy carbohydrate that Mother Nature takes care of with something called acorn trees. Yes, I said acorn, not acorn, but acorn trees. And so if we do that correctly, if we're managing our forest well, we get all the nuggets coming naturally down out of the air hitting the ground, right?
That's right.
We never had to put anything in a feeder. That's just my perspective. And we're not concentrating critters on one spot, like a 1 by 1 spot, 1 foot by 1 foot spot, that where now we increase the incidence of something called disease, and the predators nail birds there every time. And that just bothers me. And so with us dealing with declines of turkey in isolated areas, why would we want to increase the opportunity for mortality for the birds we're trying to grow by having a feeder out?
Right.
So kind of backing
agree.
up a little bit, you're saying that is there, I guess my question is there a better way? Because here's the simple facts, where it's going to be hard to get your layman redneck from Alabama to quit throwing corn
Look
out.
out.
So is there a better way that people can still use those methods, I guess, would be the correct term. Use those methods, but do it in a more sophisticated way, so to speak, to where it's not as much of a predatory trap for turkeys?
Yeah, so if someone wants to supplemental feed, okay, that's technically there's the scientific term, supplemental feeding. We ain't
Right.
gonna call it baiting. We're gonna call supplemental feeding. If they
Right.
want to do it, there's two things here to consider. One is, we know that all corn is supposed to be treated, okay, prior to going out to make sure that aflatoxin levels are not too high. Some of the research done on turkey shows that aflatoxin doesn't necessarily kill turkeys. However, it does weaken them. Okay, so a weakened bird, just like a weakened human being. Let's talk about, hey, we're going to go on a hike next week, but we've been sick. We've been dog sick with the flu, but we still got to climb that mountain. Now, I'm going to tell you boys right now, that's a hard feat to do. And we might be throwing up along the way. We might not make it to the top. We may go over and just crouch up in a hole with no help. And so when I think about these things and thinking about now we got snipers on the same trail trying to pick us off while we're sick trying to get up that mountain, you know what happens? We get picked off just like a turkey does. And so some of these effects may not be immediate, but it does have an impact. So if we were to put a better grain out, like a grain sorghum, okay, but not in a feeder, but if we're going to distribute it into cover and not in one spot, now all of a sudden, if we're in a hard time where a food source is limited, which typically food sources aren't limited, but let's just say I feel like there's a need that I got to put out extra food for birds, that if you were to distribute that with a spreader into good quality habitat, good cover being knee high to basically waist high, where those birds can get in there and pick it out. And now they're not being concentrated in one area. Let's say a great example, a roadway, okay? Let's say you got a roadway through your property. Maybe it's old logging road and you got a really nice thinned out edge where it's been daylighted. So you got good structure beside it. We know that birds love to use these areas, as do deer. Deer are edge species, but we distribute the seed into that edge. Now these birds can filter in and out, eat it. They got cover and boom, done. You've done what you wanted to do. Makes you feel good. Extra food on the ground.
Right.
It's not out in the open. It's not on a feeder. Predators can't concentrate. And so you have achieved all your goals. So yes, there's a way to do that correctly.
Okay. That makes sense.
So
makes sense.
Let's get into a little bit of like cover and nesting and things like that. With proper management, like during deer season, like sometimes you just kind of go in and clear the edges or something like that when you're planting your food plot or something like that. Is that a no-no? I mean, let's talk about some of that stuff. Like, how can we ensure that our activities related to deer season preparation don't disturb our nesting sites and important cover for our turkeys just in general?
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about, in general, from the deep south into really the Midwest, you need to be on a 2-year disturbance cycle in order to maintain nesting habitat. Once you get into year 3, what we typically see is it starts getting a little gnarly. Will birds still nest in there? Absolutely. In the deep south, absolutely not, because the growing season is longer and it gets too thick. And so birds need bare ground. They need to be able to slide in there, slide back out once that brood is hatched. And so, yes, during deer season coming up right now, if you got an area you disturbed last year, if you're staying out of that, that's great, because that area is going to really emerge into that second year, which is going to be ideal nesting habitat. And the thing is, we got to be thinking about having a sea of habitat on your property. Because I'll tell you right now, birds don't come out and go, hey, guys, we're going looking for this best nesting area. Now, what they do is they typically merge toward areas they're feeding in and taking time to find food, et cetera. And they're trying to associate back where they've been there before, okay? And so when that bird gets ready to drop, I ain't kidding you. She ain't going, oh Lord, I got to go across the 10 acres to find this spot again. They don't do that. It's like they're looking around in their immediate vicinity and boom, here it goes. And so if you got that sea of habitat mentality, you're going to be good. So I would recommend it's better to do more disturbance than less, because we have a limiting factor out there. Brood range and nesting habitat is the most limiting factor for turkey production across the United States, especially in the Southeast, because we don't do enough disturbance.
So diversity is your friend right now, in this category.
Absolutely. And so from going from roadsides, trying to keep them managed, instead of just mowing them down year after year, going, man, I got to mow this down because it's got to look good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's go on a 2-year rotation, guys. Let's manage one side of the road this year and then manage the next side of the road next year. Now you're maintaining cover there. If you do it wisely or you chop it up, those are simple things and can be really nice corridors, transition zones for both deer and turkey, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So you don't have to plan every single thing. So maybe even light disking, or maybe if you're on the edges, making sure the edges of your openings, you're trying to push back in there a little bit. Maybe even create some little corridors into the woods. There could be some hack and squirt. You can come in with a mulcher. You can come in with a chainsaw. There's a lot of little things you can do in order to achieve some of that disturbance regime.
Yeah, and if any of our viewers in general out there that you don't know what this looks like, don't know what really he's talking about, this is all foreign to you, TFT has done an excellent job at producing content to show you this type of stuff. We've been a part of those things. We try to do it on, as much as we can to promote this type of stuff as well with land management and turkey conservation. But there really is no excuse. TFT has provided a ton of information, a ton of content that you should know really what you should be doing. So good stuff, Jason. I appreciate that.
And even so, I know me and Jason early on had the conversation, because we're on a private lease that timber company owns. And it's just kind of going back to a lot of the stuff that we've learned in the last couple of years. Like we can't burn on that place. They won't allow it. But just as you said, too much is better than not enough. And I mean, if it's just by hack and squirt, you mean cutting down bad trees and squirting some stuff to keep them from regrowing. Whether it be that, mulching, or literally just hooking up a plow behind the tractor and just plowing raw land. And that's good, because in 2 to 3 years, again, there's so many things in the natural seed bed that's going to regrow those native plants that are going to be good for what you're saying, up to 3 years, or roughly about 3 years.
You're spot on. And this time of the year, you stimulate legumes. At all other times of the year, when you disturb the dirt, you do not create the opportunity for these legumes to come up. And if you're really wanting a lot of good quality seed that's going to be out there for birds, you want that. If you're talking about legumes for deer, talking about food source, Lord have mercy. I mean, people want to grow legumes for deer, and they'll buy bags of stuff to do this. Well, let's just go out lightly here of the ground. I have done this where I've worked with landowners, especially down y'all's neck of the woods, in the coastal plain there, where if you disturb September going into even early October, we can create an entire field of like partridge pea. Now, partridge pea is fantastic legume. Deer will eat the snot out of it, okay? It's fantastic. But it also holds seed late into the season. Why is that important? Some plants holds, as soon as it produces seed, it spits it out, drops it, it gets plucked. Well, partridge pea holds it late, so you got a good late food source, a good heavy legume. It's almost like a soybean, right? But it's smaller, that these birds will be able to feed on late in the year. So it's not only good for turkeys, but also good for quail. So you got to think about some of these things. Some of these quality weeds coming up, man, they just have a lot of purposes. And if you help disturb at the right time, man, you just let Mother Nature do what she naturally does. If we're to go back and look at how Mother Nature used to do this back in the day when there was a lightning fires were usually most prolific August going into September in the past. That's just the history of mankind. It would burn acres and acres and acres. Then all of a sudden, all the critters come back in. Now, the Native Americans saw what was going on, and they would, artificially light fires in the past as well. What they did is when they did it, it kept those, I'm going to get technical, the ectoparasite levels down. Ticks, chiggers, things like that. Kept those levels down, but they could also access these areas. And what they saw is that critters would come back and feed in these places. So back in the day when we even had buffalo down south, right? Hard to imagine. We had elk here in the past too. Alabama was an elk state, by the way. I don't know if y'all know this.
I did know that.
A little elk history here for you. We had elk all over the state of Alabama at one time before the Great Depression, and people got hungry and killed the last elk in Alabama. They even tried to reintroduce elk in Alabama way back in the day, but people were hungry, and so they whacked them back out. But we had all these mega fauna coming down along with in the coastal plain. Y'all had red wolves everywhere. And so these fires would occur. All these great weeds would come up and the critters would come to them. Okay. So now you're looking at, hey, great place to hunt naturally. And so Mother Nature's been doing this and early man was doing it. Why can't we repeat that now?
Right.
Exactly.
Right. It's the best form of insurance to me. I mean, there's so many things that benefit
Amen,
from
brother.
learning. So,
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, people think that you have to go out and do all these, land prep stuff like that, but really disturbance is the best way to go. Whether that's fire, however you disturb the ground. Go through some just if people don't know, go through some ways you can disturb, Jason.
Yeah, sure. So we talk about fire. It's easy. It's cheap once it's manageable. You could also do this with herbicide. Select herbicides to disturb the ground, to get rid of the weeds you don't want. And there's a ton of cocktails, and depending on the site and what you need, that's an avenue. But being on a tractor in light disturbance with a disc, I'm not talking about turning it over where it's solid, pretty dirt, right? It's clean.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about just enough to knock the weeds down. You got little patchworks of dirt available. We've got folks that I've worked with roller choppers. They'll take a roller chopper on the edges, knock down the heavy hardwoods. It really gets a little bit of root disturbance, and then you're just getting a little bit of a dirt turn. And then all of a sudden you get this good weed community come up. And so they do it along roadways, along their openings, wherever they can get in there. Sometimes if it's a pine stand, they may even, if the rows are wide enough and it's been thin, you can go down and just go down between some of those rows. And man, all of a sudden you got good weed communities coming up in your forest now that you may not be able to manage because you're on a lease. So there's all these small things you can do just to create a little bit of disturbance and get you there. You can do this on a 4-wheeler with a drag. I have, listen, I've rednecked it with
you can rake it.
You can rake it. I mean, if you really want to, man, you can come with a lot of things. But I've gotten a 4-wheeler, man, with like a quote unquote an old gate, like an old chain link gate.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Tied it to a rope, and here I go. And I tell you what, man, you can create a lot of good weeds that way and really create places where you want to see animals at the correct time of the year. And it's just great habitat throughout the rest of the year too.
Yeah. Yeah. And all, the importance of that is this, again, it may sound like we're kind of just promoting this for turkey, but there's so many good ways and nutritional value that these processes that Mr. Jason's talking about is just equally as good for deer as they are turkey. So that's the takeaway.
Oh, absolutely. Pretty much all those legumes I'm talking about. Listen here, I will die on this hill right now, and I can guarantee anybody out there listening, if you go out there and do some disturbance this month, guarantee you're going to get some good weeds come up. I promise you. Yeah. I've done it. Listen, guys, I've worked with probably a little over 1,000 landowners, private landowners in the state of Georgia alone, and literally been back out to sites and with landowners on a budget, like, man, I don't want to spend all this money doing food plots. I'm like, I got you. Yeah. And literally help people grow ragweed fields for deer. And I still remember a guy, he's out of Florida, and I ain't gonna mention his names. I ain't supposed to do that, but he had 750 acres in Southwest Georgia. Great guy, and on a budget, wanting to grow big deer. And so we got him on how many deer are you gonna shoot? I had him on a camera program, all this jazz. Mm-hmm. How many does? And we put in his first ragweed field. I ain't kidding you. And I what I had him do it was about 2 weeks from now. And he went in and disced half his field. It's a 5-acre field, significant size field. And I said, I want you to wait 2 weeks and come back and hit the other side, lightly disc it. He's like, all right. So he did. He's getting a little green up the next year. He's like, man, this thing it's solid ragweed. He said, this other side's got these yellow flowers coming up. I'm like, oh yeah, it's good. And so we went in and looked at it. And he's like, man, it looks like somebody come in here with a flat mower and mowed it. I said, you got a camera on this field? He's like, well, no, why would I? I said, put a camera on this field. Mm-hmm. Put a camera on it. He's like, holy crap, deer are annihilating it. I'm like, yeah. The deer were flat mowing the field, okay? Wow. Because there's so much nutrition there. The crude protein's around 20 to 22% for ragweed. It's very digestible. Most people don't understand, so protein is one thing, but digestibility is the other. If it's not digestible, very palatable, critters don't want to eat it.
Right.
So we could have an acorn that looks good, whatever, like sawtooth oak. I'm going to throw a sawtooth oak under the bus right now. It has very high tannin levels, which means it binds to proteins in the rumen. And basically it's not very digestible until it sits on the ground long enough to really leach out the tannins. Why is a white oak more preferred than the other types of oak species? Because it has low tannin levels, which means it's much more digestible. Same thing with plants. And so, so this guy, all he did, disc it up, and he was like, holy crap. And the other side of the field had a lot of partridge pea coming in as well. And he didn't even know what it was. We talked about it, and he's like, oh, man, this is good. I said, hey, it's good for everything else. And so he had a diversity of quality plants starting to emerge, and the deer were on it. And he's like, dude, I didn't have to plant all this. I said, no, you didn't have to. And, deer are putting on most of their nutrition to grow their antlers prior to the deer season, right?
Right.
Everybody gets caught up in like, hey, I need this food plot, whatever. I get it. It puts deer exactly where you want them to try to shoot them. But in order to get that antler growth that you're wanting and the nutrition that fawns even need to really set them up for success down the road and to have the available, it's basically phosphorus, right? We don't talk about micronutrients here. We get the right plants uptaking this. You know what? Everything else is really good. And so if we do this correctly, then all of a sudden you got the nutrition to grow and put a lot more antler up. Because don't get me wrong. We like antler, right? I mean, that's how it is. I mean, I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm an antler chaser too.
Absolutely.
But that's just a part of it. So, so we got to think about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good.
See, y'all got me preaching today, guys. I'm sorry.
That's good.
Well, that's what we want. That's what we want. We've been
we'll probably go ahead, Brandon.
Tag, you're it. Yeah, I was going to say, we do this all the time. There's a little bit of lag in our system, and it is what it is, but we're just going to roll with it. But I was going to say, we're going to get you to preach a little bit on roosting side. So obviously that's a pretty important topic also. So in your opinion, is there any way that we can help or I guess aid in some of the roost sites that will also equally help in deer hunting or deer season also?
I tell you what, man. I mean, turkeys are fairly finicky critters, and with roost sites, if disturbance, and this is the other type of disturbance you don't want, disturbing roost sites is bad. I mean, literally, birds get busted off the roost. Usually, after a couple of times, they will evacuate that roost, which means they may not ever show up again. And with birds this is pretty interesting. With birds working off an ecological trait, primarily turkeys, of imprinting, right? Imprinting is where they learn everything they do. And so, if we took a young poult and walked it around with us like Joe Hutto did, that bird's going to act like a person, right? You try to get it to drink a beer with you, it's going to try to drink a beer with you. I mean, that's what they do. And so these birds imprint, and they imprint to locations. And so it's a learned activity. And so if you lose that roost spot, you're going to lose your birds, and it may be for a long time before they figure out they need to be back. So when we're talking about deer season and stuff, I tell people, hey man, if you know turkeys are roosting here, don't put you staying there. Move it around somewhere else, because if you're trying to manage for both species, you're going to be in trouble. If you got some known roost sites and you see around those roost sites, it's starting to have a gnarly look. Okay. And I guess I need to define gnarly, but you have a lot of mid-story coming up where birds need to get to a roost site. They need to flush up. And so if they got a lot of cover right over their head in the mid-story, we're talking like 3 to 4 foot up to 25 foot. Okay. For example, if that is thick where they can't get through there, let's say you got a bunch of spice bush. Okay. That's a common mid-story species. Maybe you have invasive honeysuckle or autumn olive, or especially in Alabama, got some issues with privet. That could actually hamper birds getting up to those roost spots. And basically it could change them roosting there. Now, a great technique would go in there to start removing some of those during the day, not late in the evening, not early in the morning, right? In order to try to open that back up just for them to have accessibility. So those are some action items. Maybe you have too many trees per acre coming in. Maybe you have Mother Nature come in and there's a blowdown. And now you got all this mid-story coming up. Maybe you go in there, do a little hack and squirt, maybe just a drop and fail with a chainsaw or something in order to move a few of those trees out of the way. So those are some opportunities. Each situation is different. But the most important one to me, and I've told people whether you're hunting turkeys or you're hunting deer, stay out of the damn roost sites. Bottom line. I've seen so many people lose their birds because they just got to get in too close. Oh, man, I thought I saw a deer. Just stay out, man. Just stay out. Catch that deer a little bit, 100 yards down, right? So just be smart about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And we'll probably have Mr. Jason on, I'm sure, several times to talk about some different things. We don't want to run out of time here. I know we're clicking around 40 some odd minutes. Let's end it with a little bit of predator management during this time of year, and we don't have to go down too many rabbit holes with it, and then we'll roll out. Sound good?
Absolutely. We are coming into, depending on what state you're in and what your laws are, but most states you can even get a depredation permit if you are not in an open trap season where you can trap. But you can also be thinking about when you got that gun in hand, if it is open season or bow, no doubt it never hurts to take out a few of your mammalian mesopredators. I will tell you right now, from a perspective of turkeys, coyotes and bobcats are always a discussion topic. But I'll tell you right now, cats are ferocious animals that take out more birds than any other mesopredator. The one behind that is a fox. So there's two types of foxes, a gray fox and a red fox. And so your gray foxes are native to the state of Alabama. And the gray foxes are. And the interesting with grays is they can actually even crawl up the tree. They can run right up the tree, jump a limb. And so not many people know that.
Those the other day. Yep.
It's nuts. They are effective. Man, they're good. So if you're out, just thinking about trying to manage for birds and really deer. I can tell you, I've hunted Alabama, I've hunted here in Kentucky, hunted a lot of places, and I have literally watched coyotes stalk deer as a family group and run them into fields, chase them in the woods, and I've watched them even chase mature bucks. And so they're taking that kind of role of that major predator called a wolf that used to be here many years ago. And the old mountain lion that we used to have down this way. And so just to say this, if we're trying to take a few of those predators out, it's going to help. Now, are we going to ever remove all of them? No, we're not. No, we're not. Is it work? Always? Yes. But it's hunt season, guys and gals. So have a little bit of fun. Enjoy your time out there and think about what you can do to give back to the critters that you want to see more of. And so right around the corner, we got trapping season coming in almost every state. So keep that in mind. Set a few traps this year. Have a little bit of fun with that. And it's a great time to scout, too. That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Right. Brandon, is there anything else you want to talk about or say before we wrap this thing up? I'm running out of battery.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I've got a ton more questions, but again, I know we'll get Mr. Jason on, and it is what it is. So,
yeah. But I don't want to, continue, and something happens. So we got a good thing going here, but I do want to have Mr. Lapardis back on with us, because I know me and Brandon both, we got a lot that we would like to pick. But if there's anybody out there, obviously, if you enjoyed this, thumbs up, like, subscribe, all those things. Give us a comment. If you got any questions, I'd like to see Mr. Lapardis come back on and answer some of those questions. Let us know in the comment section. But if y'all don't have anything else, we'll turn it over.
Yep. Mr. Jason, I appreciate you joining us today, brother, and we'll get you back on when it lines up for everybody and we got our batteries charged.
We got our ducks in a row.
That's good. No, that's good. No, I appreciate y'all having me on. And for anyone listening out there, if you guys want a little bit more in the turkey arena, check us out on turkeysfortomorrow.org on the web. You can find us on all the social media platforms. We'd love to have you. Love to see you at one of our future events. We got a lot of things shaking across the nation right now, especially here in the Southeast. A lot more to talk about in the future, from research to habitat projects, you name it. But we're very much expanding, and it's all about turkeys. We're looking to save the wild turkey using science-based solutions for long-term sustainability. Bottom line.
There you
Good deal. Good deal. Again, appreciate your time, Jason, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate
Yes, sir.
everybody joining us today. Come hang out with us next week for another Harmony Outdoor podcast. See you guys.